Hey YouTube, Gordon Miller here. Okay, so I just uploaded a video about how to minimize your expenses in order to maximize your profit. And based on a comment that somebody that I've been mentoring and working with had suggested. So I've got another suggestion today that I'm going to take a look at, and that's working with another partner of mine who I've been mentoring. So the benefit to working with young folks is that I get a different perspective, and Daniel has been great at giving me feedback on stuff. And we talk every day, several times a day, and he's been able to help me understand more about the nuances of what I've done over the years, and I thought I'd pass those along. So one of the things he asked was, in terms of creativity versus productivity, what are you looking for in an employee, and then what are various compensation models and things like that you've used successfully, and things like that. So I thought I would share a couple of key examples from all the years that we did contracts with multiple employees and things like that on it, and use that as an example to be able to demonstrate some of the concepts that we're going to talk about. First, I'm going to take a sip of water. I didn't do this in my last video, but this video is brought to you by water in a solo cup. So, still tastes better in solo cups. So anyway, since I removed all the advertising, I'm not sponsored by Solo. They're not giving me any money for that. But you can ask my wife. I love water, ice water in a Solo cup. I don't know. It's a red Solo cup, not any other color. There really shouldn't be any other color Solo cups. But anyway, I digress. All right, so back to employees. Productivity versus creativity. Now, yesterday I uploaded a video about the three-dimensional matrix of value in terms of the number of skills somebody has, their degree of mastery of it, and then the depth component for their ability to learn new skills over time. And so one of the things that we talked about was what did I do to help enhance that? So there's a couple things. One of the things that I have done over the years is that we had set a $250 per person book limit per year at one point in the company, where if somebody wanted any kind of technical books or things like that, we ordered them. We had a large library in our office, and when new interns came in, they may not have been able to afford the books. Some of the books were $100, $150, and so they were able to get at books that they wouldn't normally have had access to, and that's one of the reasons our internship program went so well. And we had two of the people from our first intern class had spent years with us, and so that's always great. The benefit to the books is that they didn't have to buy them themselves, and multiple people got to use the books. They didn't just sit on the shelf, so that was always good. The other thing we've done is we've paid for certifications. So if somebody had a need to get certified in this one area or wanted to add to certain skills, whether it's Microsoft certification or whether it's Cold Fusion certification or whether it's any of the networking or security certifications, we went ahead and paid for courses and paid for certifications for folks if that's what they wanted to do, because we knew that we would be able to recoup that in different ways in the various projects that they would be working on. So the other thing that we did was if some of our folks had come to us and they had not quite finished their degree, they had another year to go, or it's another semester to go, things like that. And so what we did was we encouraged them to work 30 hours a week. They got paid like they were still working 40 on salary. And so whatever that difference was, whether it's $1,000, $1,500, $2,000 a month, whatever it was, that they weren't working, was essentially money we were contributing to their tuition. And so it was basically like a scholarship program. And we've done that repeatedly on a number of opportunities where there were people who we knew we could invest in that would give us the opportunity to get a return from that investment. And we've done that successfully a number of times. So in that one example, somebody was able to go back to school, get their degree, and because they had their degree, they were able to then work on certain government projects where the minimum requirement was a degree, a technical degree. So even if you were great, and even if you've been doing the work for 5 years, a lot of those contracts require a degree. So we wanted them to get a degree, and if that meant we had to be the one to help promote them going back to school and kind of make that possible, that's what we did. So that was one thing. The other thing was we also, when we got new people on board, one of the things we did was use an example of 2,000-hour contracts just because it's easier. So people that were dedicated full-time on a contract where we were billing, let's say, $95 an hour, or even $100 an hour, just to make the math easy. If we were billing out $100 an hour for them, then we were actually paying them typically $50 an hour. And so what we would typically do is over the first 6 months, we would actually pay them $45 an hour. And then assuming that the first 6 months went well, we would then pay them $55 an hour. And the average for that year would still be $50 an hour, which is what they would get paid on a 2,000-hour contract. So they'd be making $100,000 a year. And so most people didn't care. It took an adjustment if they were making less money, but then they were eventually going to be making more money, a lot more money, and so 10% more money. And so that was, going from $45 to $55 is a huge jump for some people, especially if you're going, on a 2,000-hour contract, making even $5 an hour more is an extra, $20,000. I'm sorry, extra $10,000. So now that gives you an opportunity to understand kind of the magnitude of the benefit. So people that stayed and people that put the effort in, and we could tell whether somebody was going to work out or not, then we would use them on the contracts. And we, like our Health and Human Services contracts, ran for 10 full years. And we had a number of people that spent majority of the time. I think we even had some people that were there the full 10 years. If not, I think the longest was 8 or 9. So, but those are great things. I mean, somebody starts at 22 and, they're 32 and have a family and things like that when our contract finally ended. But, it's been a great opportunity, great experience. And we usually try to bump those people up 3% a year. And so they would make an extra $1, $1.50, $2 an hour, whatever it was, based on the amount, every year as things were continuing. But in order to make sure somebody was a good fit and making sure that they, because we have significant onboarding cost if they leave in the first 6 months, typically what would happen is they would give us 30 days notice, but it would take a month or two at least, probably 2 months, to find somebody else because they usually have to give a month's notice. And so basically we'd be out 2 months, at least a month or 2 months worth of revenue on the contract. And so we're talking about missing out on $20,000 to $40,000 in revenue, which is a majority of the profit in that position. So, or all of it, for the entire year. We had one position that was vacant for about 4 months, and it was actually all of the profit on that position for the entire 5-year contract. So it's important that you have the right relationship with the people that you bring onto the team and that they understand their role and the component that they play in the team and how the financial dynamics of that works. Another way that we worked on with individuals who worked with us on a salary position on our core team was we looked at the amount of time that they were actually there in terms of billable hours, as well as physically how many hours they were in there. And there were folks that weren't with us too long, but they had wanted a $10,000 raise, and so we looked at where they were and how much work they had done, value they had contributed. And for all salaried employees that were not on contract basis but were on project basis, we covered those on our overhead. The way we did that was that we expected them to be around for 2,000 hours a year, roughly 40 hours a week for 50 weeks, and 2 weeks of vacation and holidays and things like that. So what we would do, though, is we would book the time they showed up, or what time they clocked in, clock out for lunch, clock back in, and clock out for good. Well, what we found is that some people were showing up late at like 9:30. They were leaving for lunch promptly at noon. They would take a little longer because they would stop by the bank or run another errand or something like that at lunch. They get back about 1:30, and then they would, get a jump on the traffic at 4:30 and leave it a little early so that they didn't stay until 5. Well, the problem with that is that if you have an 8-hour day and you show up a half an hour late, you leave a half an hour early, and you take an hour and a half for lunch, then, basically there's 6.5 hours worth of potentially billable time in there if you're lucky. And so I remember very distinctly in this one employee review, we did I said, look, if you want an extra 10,000, hey, let's take a look and see what the billable hours were. Let's see what your overall unused time was and unbilled time. And the total worth of billable time was fairly low. I think it was like 1250 or something like that, 1250 hours, 1245, I believe. And then his total time there, I remember that exactly. It was 1625 hours. So 1625 hours, I was like, wow, where's our 2000 hours? You're 400 hours short. Technically, you owe me $20,000 of time that I couldn't assign stuff to you because you weren't here. So, I made the deal with him. I said, look, I tell you what, you owe me 20,000 from last year. If you write me a check for 20,000 right now, I'll increase your salary by $10,000 a year and continue that moving forward. And, he kind of, looked kind of puzzled and just said, well, can I go back to my desk? And I'm like, sure. That's your choice. So he stayed about another year, and then he left to go work somewhere else, which was fine. Because for me, he didn't demonstrate the commitment to being there. And it was one of those kind of things where if you're there and I don't have work for you, that's on me. That's my issue to deal with. But if I've got work to do and you're not there and I can't give it to you to do and it doesn't get done or it gets done by somebody else, then, why am I paying you? So, I look for those kinds of attributes in an employee. And Daniel was talking about, do I value creativity and people that think outside the box and stuff like that? And I do, I really do, but to a degree. So there's a limit. So I remember very specifically, I gave somebody on the team a specific task, and I said, look, here's what I need you to do. I want this project to look like this other project. Although what I want you to do is, change the color scheme from blue to green and add the logo like this and had very specific instructions. And it should have taken no time at all. It should have taken like maybe, 80 hours. And, 120 hours later, I come back to this guy and I go, so let's see where you're at here. And he's like, all right, well, I think you're going to like it. And I go, okay, well, I hope I will. And so what he had done was something he wanted to do, which he goes, I think this is really creative and I think you're really going to like it. I like it a lot better than what you wanted me to do. Okay, well, I hope I like it because if not, I just paid for the last 3 weeks of your time for nothing. So, and of course it was, he didn't understand the underlying reality of why I wanted it a specific way. And so when I saw what he wanted to do, and it was just not up to our standards or not the way we would do things. And so I said, well, I appreciate the thought, but I don't pay you to think. I pay you to get shit done. And so I think he quit like 2 months later. But I regret taking that approach. I should have helped foster his creativity and helped direct him in a more effective way. So that's on me. I'm willing to admit if I've done something wrong, and I'm happy to do that. And that was really kind of the wrong approach. I try not to take that approach with people that I work with. But in this case, I was mad at him for wasting all this time. We had a deadline for the client, And he worked 60 hours a week for the remaining week and a half to do it the way I wanted it done, and got it done by the end of the month. And ultimately we made the deadline. Ultimately the client was very happy, and ultimately the employee learned why it was that I wanted it done a certain way. I didn't always have the luxury of time to explain all that. And so everybody didn't always have the benefit of understanding the reality of what was behind all that. And so working with Daniel has been great, because as a partner of mine, and as somebody that I'm enjoying mentoring, it's really been terrific. And so I'm going to do another video on mentorship and things like that. I've had the good fortune to have a number of good mentors over the years that have really been terrific. And I wanted to kind of put some of the mentoring into perspective. And if Daniel's got some comments or some thoughts, he can provide them here. But I'm also going to open up the opportunity to help mentor some other folks to really kind of help continue to flush out some of the guidance that will ultimately make it into additional answers on Quora, information on the gordonmiller.com website that is coming up as we're working on it right now. And also some things that eventually will make it into a book that I'm working on, actually working on 2 different books. And the books will get published when the information's compiled and done. And these videos are really kind of a way to help get some feedback and work out some of the content and things like that. But anyway, I appreciate it. Again, happy to be ad-free. Happy to have my ice cold water in a red Solo cup. Man, that's good. Solo, I appreciate it. Even if Solo offered me sponsorship, I wouldn't take it because, I'm poking fun at the whole idea of YouTube ads. I'm glad to be ad free. I took a lot of grief for that, and I'll explain in another video exactly why I did that. All right. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.